are welcome to class. Today we are going to be making a basic skirt, a very basic skirt. It's going to be very easy to make because we are beginners, so we have to be as simple as much as possible. What is a basic skirt? A basic skirt is just a simple skirt that you put on the lower part of the body. The measurement that is required, we need the waist, we need the hip, and we need the skirt length, and that is all. We don't need much measurement because the skirt is entirely very simple skirt. So I have this fabric with me, though it's a stretchy fabric, but I'm going to explain to you on how to cut yours with non-stretchy fabric. So we're going to take this tutorial in two places. We are going to look into how to make a basic skirt with the stretch fabric and non-stretch fabric. Though I have a stretch fabric with me here. So now let's get started. So I have this fabric with me. I have my tape measure. I have a scissors. These basic tools are the most essential for us to start with our garment construction. And I have my pencil, I have my biro, and I have a notepad. This is where I'm going to write all the measurements required for me. And I have a chalk. I couldn't find my tailor's chalk, so I have to look for this school chalk here. So I have a chalk me too. So now, the first thing we are going to do is to get our client's measurement. We need the client measurement. My own measurement is waist. I have the waist to be 32 inches. I have the hip to be 37 inches. My skirt length for this practical is 38 inches. So now that we have these measurements, we have the waist to be 32 inches, hip to be 37 inches, and the skirt length to be 38 inches. So how do we determine the amount of fabric? This is the second step that we have to take note of. The first is to get your accurate measurement. Measure from the top, from where you want to start your measurement. If you're going to measure for a skirt now, like for this tutorial, you start from measuring the waist, then you measure the hip, and you measure the skirt length. And there is one tiny little measurement that we really need. That is the waist to hip measurement. The waist to hip measurement is very important. The waist to hip measurement is for this particular person. The hip to waist is the hip to waist or waist to hip is 8 inches. So hip to waist is 8 inches. Most time for someone with hip less than more than 36 inches, you can use 8 inches for the person. For someone that is more than 40 inches, you can use something like 8.5 inches for the person. But most times we use 8 inches for as much as hip 44, someone with 44 inches. So when you have someone more than that, then you can go further. Now let's start. How do we determine the amount of fabric? We are going to determine the amount of fabric. We need to get the widest part of the measurement, which is the hip. Hip helps us to determine the amount of measurement while making a basic skirt, and the hip is 37 inches. So we are going to look into how to do that. Now I'm going to start with non-stretchy fabric. For a beginner, you're supposed to have a fixed seam allowance. This will help us as we go on. So when you become a pro, you can just decide not to use much seam allowance. Why is seam allowance very important? You can't measure your own measurement using only the measurement that you need. You know we are going to sew, and when sewing, we take out some measurement. You know when we are sewing, you don't sew. You don't, even if you are going to use a pin to pin it, you still have to take some part of the measurement away. So the measurement will reduce and it will not fit the client to be too tight. So that is why we need measurement. And we know we also need that sometimes when we are working on your fitted skirt. So we need that. So that too also should be added. We have to consider that too. That is why we need seam allowance. We need seam allowance for sewing. We need it for that. So it's very essential. And sometimes, you know, some clients might become bigger over time. They can just decide to remove the part of the measurement that you sew in. But as you go on, you don't need much seam allowance. But as a beginner, I would advise you to take as much seam allowance as possible. So I do advise my my students from beginners class to start taking, to use 2 inches fixed for their seam allowance, especially while working on non-stretchy fabric. But when you are working on stretchy fabric, you don't need much allowance because this material is already stretchy. So it will help us to just take, because it's stretchy, so it already has its own allowance. So you don't need much seam allowance. For a stretchy fabric, 0.5 to 1 inches at most is enough for a seam allowance for stretchy fabric. But for non-stretchy fabric, for each side, you have to take 2 inches in. So now, since we have a skirt, we have a basic skirt to be, we have something like this. For the skirts, we have each side. Let's say this is the back and this is the front. So we have how many sides? We have this side, we have this side, we have this side, we have this side. So we have 4 inches, 4 sides. I'm sorry. And I said we should take 2 inches as seam allowance. So when you measure the number of sides that you have 1, you have 2, you have 3, you have 4. If you use 2 inches here, 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. So we have 2 times 4, we have 8 inches. So you have to add at least 8 inches to your hip measurement while dealing with a non-stretchy fabric. So what if our skirts have a zipper? We need that too. So that means that the back, actually if the back we have a zipper. So this is just a basic skirt. We're not going to talk about zipper here, but I'm just going to try and explain it so that we can understand that as well. So for this now, let's assume we have a zipper here. Zip. So we have a zipper. Since we said 2 inches, that means we already have one side here, one side here. So we have 2 extra inches added to it, which make it to have 6 inches, 6 sides. We have one side here, another side. We have another side here. You know, we have the zipper. So we have one side there, one side here. So we have 4. We have another side here. We have 6. So 6 times 2, we have 12. So we have to add at least 12 inches to your hip allowance while dealing with non-stretchy fabric. So now let's come back to this class now. Realize you didn't see what we did earlier while talking about seam allowance. So I assume that this is the back bodies here. This little square rectangle. We have the rectangle for the front bodies. So now we have the zipper allowance here. So we have this side, we have this side, we have this side, we have, that means we have 4 sides for back bodies when the skirt is having a zipper. So we have 2 sides for the front bodies. So 2 plus the 4 here, we have 6. So when you say 6 times 2, you have 12 inches. So that is how we got the 12 inches that will be added to the hip measurement when working on the basic skirt with the zipper. So at the pin there is no zipper, so we only need 4 sides. We need this side here, this side, this side, this side, then we have 4. So 4 times the 2 inches that I said we should be using. So 4 times 2, we have 8 inches. So we are going to add 8 inches to the hip allowance, to the hip measurement. So now we are going to take this aside now. So we come down to the level for the basic skirt with a stretch fabric. So adebin is not a stretch fabric. You already know what we are going to add. That's the only difference. So the next thing you're going to do is just to follow this pattern while working on yours. So I have this fabric. It's a 2 yards fabric, and I have my measurement. My measurement is waist 32, hip 37, skirt length 38 inches. So now we need a stretch. Adebin is not a stretchy fabric. You can just measure out your hip, 37 inches plus 8 inches. So 37 plus 8, we have 45 inches. So for a non-stretchy fabric, you're going to measure out 45 inches. You take your hip, your own hip measurement. It is not fixed. It's 37 for me. It can be 38 for you. It can be 40 for other person. So it depends on the one you have. So measure your hip measurement. Take your hip measurement, then add 8 inches to it for non-stretchy fabric. But for stretchy fabric, we have to look at the non-stretchy part. So this is the stretchy part. So this will be for the width, and this one that is not as stretchy will be for the length. That is how you cut for non-stretchy. So I'm going to measure from this stretch here because this is going to be my weight and I need my, so I'm going to measure, my hip is 37 inches, and since it's a stretchy fabric, I don't really need much measurement. So I'm going to add what I said we should add at most for 1 inches to each side. And since we are having 4 sides, that is 4 inches. So I'm going to measure 37 plus 4 to give me 41 inches. So I'm going to measure 41 inches from here. If it's not even 41 inches, we can still work it out because this is a stretchy fabric. It will cover all our lapses. So I'm measuring. Sorry, my table is not as wide as I want it to be. So I'm going to, this is 41 inches. So I'm measuring 41 inches down. So make sure you measure your width when working on non-stretchy fabric. Make sure you measure width. You measure on the non-stretchy. The stretchy part should be the width, and the non-stretchy part should be the length. So I'm just cutting this out. Make sure when you're working, you have a very sharp scissors. It's very important. So I'm going to take this aside. Take this aside. Then the next thing to do now is just to fold to be 41 inches now. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold it into 4. So when you've measured yours, fold yours into 4 as well. So after that, we place it back on the table. So fold it, then we'll place it back on the table. Then we can now measure the length that we desire. So I'm going to measure mine. You know we said it's 38 inches, but I'm going to need any allowance. You can add at most 2 inches for you. You can add 0.5. You're going to have a tiny Emmy. For mine, I'm going to add 1 inches to it. So it's going to give me 39 inches. So I'm going to measure down up to 39 inches. Then I'm going to cut it out. So just measuring. So we set 39 inches. So why do I need that? I'm going to aim and I'm going to join to the band. So the length will be reduced. So that is the main reason why we need that. So I don't really advise beginner to work on stretchy fabric. You don't have to go through what I'm going through right now. So you have to start with a cutting non-stretchy fabric. It's very important. So I'm going to measure. I'm going to cut out these parts. I don't need the rest again. So I have this aside now. Then I have my skirts almost ready. So now let's take it back to the camera. I'm sorry if you didn't see it. I just measure out my